Hello and welcome to the Politician Daily podcast of the month. This month we have Isabel and Joseph. So this month's topics, we're going to be talking about some heated topics along this month. We're going to be talking about the misconception of the word feminism, Donald Trump, and some also political issues in this country itself. So Isabel, if you would like to speak about the misconception of the word feminism.
Something that I think has been brought up a lot recently is feminism. It's in the news constantly, daily. There's obviously the Time's Up movement. There's been all of the different events that have gone on, for example, award shows that have brought up the topic of feminism. And what bothers me about it is the misconception and people's general reactions to it when someone says, I'm a feminist. Nowadays, most people pair that word with a negative misconception that, feminists are all nutters. They all think that women are better than men, and that's in fact not true, because the dictionary definition is someone who believes in complete equality between the two genders.
Don't you think that especially one biggest point about the feminist movement is the difference in pay between the genders? Now, wouldn't you think that if, by the logic that women do get paid less than men just because of their gender, then surely every large company would employ women specifically to have more profit and make more money? I think that maybe people take it over an average instead of it. So do you think that still the wage gap is a big problem, and what could be done about it?
Well, yeah, I do, because the example that I always use is that a female surgeon is paid 62% of what a male surgeon is paid. And I don't know about anybody else, but I personally wouldn't care about the gender of the surgeon that would possibly be operating on me, so I don't think that they should have a different pay rate based on their gender.
But couldn't you say that some male doctors may work overtime and that they get more money?
You could also say that some female doctors work overtime.
Okay, yeah.
And Carl, building on what you said about why don't businesses just employ women because they can pay them less? Well, what you've got to look at is that quite often, I'm not saying all the time, but women can perform the job better than a man can, or have better skills to do the job better than a man can, and so that's why men are paid. That's why women are hired in the first place. But the problem then that people have is that these women aren't paid as much for the same work, and that fundamentally isn't fair, and that's what people have the problem with.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it is a pressing topic, but I think as time goes on, we've seen a lot more women coming into higher jobs, such as high political jobs and things in businesses. So this glass wall, I think, is started to be broken a bit more by women in society, and the way that they are building on their own jobs. Do you think, Isabel, that maybe the glass wall is still a problem, and maybe women can't maybe get to places that they want to in life because of their gender?
I think the good thing now about the topics being raised a lot more, so therefore it's raising awareness of the fact that women might possibly be held back by what you called the glass wall or the glass ceiling. But I think now that people are talking about it, it's starting to change a lot more because it's getting a lot more attention.
Yeah. Okay, so as we all know, Brexit has been a big topic in this month's news. Obviously, we've seen more deals go through. There's been some controversial topics with Brexit, saying about whether the party, Theresa May, is strong enough to lead our country into such a big event that's going on, especially in modern day politics. Do you think anything, Joe, about what our leadership has done and whether it has been good enough for our country?
Well, personally, I don't think it has been good enough at all. She's exhibited nothing but a weakness and a failure to not only control her own party, but even control and assert what she wants to do. We're still no clearer what are we, 2 years, almost
Mhm,
one and a
yeah.
half years on now since the referendum, on what Brexit will look like, and B, how we will achieve that and what that will mean for us as a country. And she's the strong and stable government that she promised in her last general election. It resembles nothing of the government that we have now, but also she has not delivered the promise that she said she would about having a fair and a firm policy for Brexit.
So, do you think that Labour, obviously led by Jeremy Corbyn, would be a better party to lead this country? Not in general, and just going through Brexit as a whole, because maybe, as we've seen, that Labour don't really have any economic plans for the future, especially going through Brexit. And maybe they, even if the current government has done a weak job going through Brexit, which obviously we have seen in the news and obviously over the past month, is that they have, and maybe Theresa May's leadership has been very questionable. But do you think that Labour as a whole and its leader are a good enough replacement for the country and going through Brexit?
Well, at the moment, I think they have, and I'm happy to admit this, I think they have a slight problem because their official stance is that they'll remain in the single market and the customs union for any Brexit transitional process, which will approximately take about 4 years, and then from then they are actually saying that they'll leave the single market and the customs union. But overwhelmingly, I think 73% of young Brexit voters young Labour voters would want Britain to remain in the single market and the customs union, and something like 60% of the whole electorate would want them to remain in the single market and the customs union. So I think that if Labour get that firm stance on Brexit and know where they're going, I think they'll be better suited to take the country through Brexit because they're all united under Jeremy Corbyn, and that's the difference between Labour and the Conservatives. In Conservatives, you have a party driven by politicians who all maybe look for their own personal gain. You look at the last cabinet reshuffle, you have people like Jeremy Hunt desperately refusing what the Prime Minister wants because he wants a better position for himself, whereas you don't have maybe those power struggles within the Labour Party, and that's why there'll be a more efficient and a more effective government to take the country through Brexit.
So, specifically going over the Labour's stability, don't you think that, as we saw with the last general election, Labour especially have gone over one of their biggest policies, which was obviously the student loans debts policy, and obviously took a huge U-turn on that. So do you think that even though they've had some questionable things that they've gone through, maybe John McDonnell, the shadow secretary, has spoken